Hello, my name is Michael Cortez, and I am analyzing the Prelude in G minor, Opus 23, number 5, by Rachmaninoff. So we're going to start with an overview of the piece, and it's going to show you the form and the structure of the whole thing that I've diagrammed. So onward we go with the presentation. So before starting, we have the choices of listening to the piece and or actually looking up performance if you want to check it out on YouTube. But take your time, click on the speaker and listen to the piece, and when you're done, we'll move on to the remaining of the presentation. Okay? So, you finish listening to the presentation, and we have right here the phrase diagram, which I hope you can see. I put a lot of work into this. And what you can see is that it's in 3 sections from what I've worked on, and I believe it was a full sectional ternary form. And right here we have the A section. Hold on. There you go. We have the A section, which is right here. And it's about 34 measures long. And from what I worked out was the majority of the piece is CBI, continuation phrasing, throughout the whole thing. And from here we have the B section, which starts over here, and it's slight portion, but it's a nice contrasting point in the piece. Then we have the retransition right here, and we go back to the A section, which is somewhat similar to its counterpart. And then we have a coda right here at the very end that finishes off the whole piece. So we're right here at the beginning, and this is the first half of the A section, and it starts in G minor, and this section the first half of it's about 9 measures, and right here we have the beginning of the piece, which is pretty much exactly the same right here, and from the 3rd measure onward it keeps that feel of it, but it starts adding fragments right here, which makes it more interesting, to say the least. And over here at the very end of the phrase, we have it ending on a half cadence, and it goes back to, or repeats, the motive of the piece, and it continues on, has some fragments that end up ending on the PAC right here at the very end. So right here we have a second section of the A part, and it starts on E flat right here, but it still shows that we're in G minor, which is present right here in this section, where it sustains on the dominant and has some crazy notes here, which sound really nice in my opinion. And yeah, it's much more aggressive. There's a lot more 16 notes, if you notice, in this section, specifically towards the very end of it, which leads to a cadence of a PAC that goes back to the main theme of the piece, which is right here. And so the second part of this is the piece goes back to the A section, or the very beginning of the A section, which is pretty much like a rounded binary from what I've discovered, but it doesn't really repeat much of the primary theme or motives of the piece. And right here we have some less notes, as you can see, and right here from this system onward it pedals on the D and slows down, which starts setting up towards the piece going on to the next section, which is the B section. So right here is a very the contrast of the piece, B section, and it still is in G minor, which it doesn't seem like it is, but it is in G minor, even though it starts on D. But right here we could see that there's still some B flats in the chords, which makes it still in that key. And what's really noticeable is we have these floating up and down contour of on the left hand for the bass, which is really different compared to what we had earlier, was a lot of chunking or aggressive sounding accompaniment for the piece. But throughout the whole B section we have the floating smooth contour line of the bass, and right above it is the melody, which, as you can see, is in pianissimo, which is a drastic change compared to the section prior to that. And what we get from this section is a really melancholic sound in the piece, and it's pretty much like a two-phrase structure right here. We have this, which is repeated soon after that. So that basic idea is pretty much the same, which goes to the contrasting of it, or the contrast. And it goes to sustain on a dominant right here, which is pretty much in D. And it repeats the section of what we basically learned with a little bit embellishments, slight differences. It's not that orally, it's not that easy to figure out these differences, but they are there. So the B section continues as it and repeats as before, but it changes rhythmically, as you can see in the middle section, or this right here, specifically this line. And towards the end of the B section, we have a sustaining on as if the key was in D, because we have a sustain on the A. So it will be like a 5 half cadence, because you can see that it goes down to a D right here, the pianissimo or pianinissimo, which leads to the retransition. And right here at the retransition, it goes back to that motive of the 8th note and 2 16 notes, that big, that aggressive sound that the piece that states throughout the whole thing. So right here we could see that harmonically it starts shifting around to different sounds on the downbeat, different notes, which ends up leading into G minor right here, which is the beginning of the recapitulation. So the recapitulation starts right here, and it's still in G minor, and it has the same basic structure or phrasing of it until we have here where it says tempo 1. It starts changing harmonically, but still contains that feeling to it, that structure of what of that rhythm motive. And from here, they still kind of Rachmaninoff, you could see, kind of stretches the harmonies, because he could have just easily gone from here to here, but he doesn't. So he stretches it a little bit more, and this leads to the second section of the A part, where we have all those 16 notes and that aggressive sound. And it's pretty much the same from the rest from here on. Right here we have what I call something a little extra, and yes, there is a coda. I believe there's a coda starting at measure 72, and there's a pedal on G, as you can see, for every downbeat on each measure. But his contains the same characteristics, but he really embellishes and adds extra flair to the piece, as you can see right here. And he does that for a good amount of the page or rest of the piece. And towards the end, it leads to a PAC and also a false cadence. And this loud fortissimo ends on a pianissimo at the very end, as you've heard. And I think that's a really interesting way to end this piece by him. So right here we have the themes and motives I have mentioned earlier. Right here with these arrows, I was gonna, elaborate more on how we have this motive, or mainly this theme, that recurs throughout the whole piece, starting on the G. And it also has characteristics of the 8th note that's followed by the 2 16 notes. And it's found throughout the whole piece, and it's really something that defines this prelude. So right here we have the theme or the motive of the left hand of the piano, which is arpeggiating through the chord, and it's just very soft and huge contrast from the rest of the piece. And right here in this orangish arrow is another theme, rhythmically and somewhat melodically, of the B section. And it's just very soft and very quiet, and that's pretty much it. So that's my analysis of this prelude by Rachmaninoff, and I really had a great time analyzing this, and I also thought it was a great challenge because it's just not something I'm really used to hearing. And what I got out of this piece was, as it is shown, a march, or as you can read, and what I could kind of envision or picture from this is like an army of soldiers getting ready for some type of battle or war. And the beginning really shows it, because it starts on piano, and to me it seems like the start of these group of soldiers getting ready to go out to war. And that leads into the second section, which to me feels like they are at war, or they're about to enter war, because it's just very dramatic and very loud and different, and there's a lot going on in that section. And the B section just seems like, as I said before, it seems very melancholic or kind of somber, as I can picture like soldiers risking their lives, or yeah, pretty much risking their lives in battle. And that really makes me think about that based on what's happening in that section. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening in on my presentation. Had a really nice time with this, and it was a great challenge. And be sure to answer the questions and let me know what you thought of this piece. And yeah, thank you.